Hey YouTube, it's Chad. So it's actually November 1st and I missed my Halloween deadline to show some soundtracks, but like Ministry said, every day is Halloween. So I'm still going to do a short little video here just to pick out 5 horror soundtracks for you. Let me show you what I got here. The first one I have here is one of my all-time favorite movies and soundtracks. It's Dawn of the Dead, and this one is by Goblin, the Italian prog rock band. This movie is an all-time classic. It was made here in Pittsburgh and filmed at the time newly made Monroeville Mall, which still exists. And so it was called Dawn of the Dead in the US, and then it was released in Italy first under the name Zombie Dawn of the Dead. And the soundtrack, like I said, is by the Italian prog rock band Goblin, who's done a lot of work with Dario Argento. So this one is actually one of many copies I have. This one was released by Dago Red out of Italy in 2000 actually. So it's got this weird mall photograph from the movie. That one is actually still on print. You can find it. Waxworks just did a double LP repress, and there's some AMS reissues that you can find fairly cheap as well. So pretty much I have 3 or 4 different copies and they all sound pretty great. So the other cool thing about the movie is that there was, in the US version, there was actually a lot of incidental, like, library music that was used throughout the film, and that was actually released by Trunk Records, I think in early 2000s. And you're probably familiar, if you've seen the movie, the end credits I think uses the first track on here, the Gonk. There's another track in here that was, forget which one exactly. There was a track in here that was used in the movie Shaun of the Dead as well. So these are just library songs that they, got out of license to use in the film. But they're pretty funny and highly appropriate for the movie. And this is out of print, but you can pick it up on Discogs for a reasonable price. One of my all-time favorite synth soundtracks came out in the early 80s on one of the best labels of the time, Varese Sarabande, is the amazing score for Maniac. And this was done by Jay Chataway. And Maniac is just a brutal, sleazy movie. Slasher movie actually from New York. So also kind of related to Dawn of the Dead is that Tom Savini, who did some effects for Dawn of the Dead, also did some of the effects in Maniac as well. So this is, it says right here he used Mini Moog, a Prophet 5, a Mellotron, a Fender Rhodes piano, and a Obenheim polyphonic synthesizer. So this soundtrack is highly appropriate for the movie in that it has a overall just uneasy, sleazy vibe to it. So it's not a fun listen, but it is definitely appropriate for the movie, and one of the best synth scores of all time. So Maniac by Jay Chataway. also pulled a modern soundtrack that is actually for the remake of Maniac, which starred, what is his name? Frodo Baggins. Elijah Wood was the star of the remake. As you can see, they made it look fairly similar to the original as far as the design. This is a Mondo release that came out in 2012. And this soundtrack was done by, I believe he's French composer named just Rob. And I never really heard of him prior to this. He just recently did a few more scores, but this is probably one of the best modern scores out there, and one of my favorites. And I'm going to do a needle drop on a song called Juno, which is kind of not like everything else on here. It's got female vocals on it, but it kind of gives some hope to the soundtrack, I guess. Otherwise, it's just like bleak synth wave kind of stuff. So, but I definitely do recommend this. I think this version is out of print, but I think you can find a different version for a cheaper price. So, Rob's Maniac. I don't wanna fall apart again. Can't you see? We're gonna jump off the three. And you mean that much to me. Can't you see? Nobody likes you but me. Here is a classic Troma movie. For the soundtrack was released in 2012, no, 14 for the first time ever. It is by John McCollum, and it is the soundtrack for the movie Surf Nazis Must Die. And this is another all synth soundtrack, and the opening titles are amazing. I'm going to do a needle drop of that. I would highly recommend checking this out. The movie is a lot of fun as well. So yeah, Surf Nazis Must Die. Last one I have here is one of my all-time favorite soundtracks, and it's a really amazing gorgeous like sci-fi horror movie, and it's Andrei Korzynski's Possession, and this is the soundtrack for Andrei Zulawski's movie called Possession. It was actually released in the US in the early 80s, and then it recently just got a nice Blu-ray update as well as a reissue. This soundtrack was released for the first time on Finders Keepers Records in 2012, I believe. This is actually repressed, so you can still get this. And I'm going to play a snippet from the opening track, The Night the Screaming Stops, and it's actually the opening titles for the movie. So the movie is kind of a weird love story. I don't want to give it away, but it's a little like an art film, but there's a twist to it. So I highly recommend checking it out. Possession. And that's pretty much what I got for you this time. I'll continue to show soundtracks throughout the year. So I hope everyone had a great Halloween, and thanks for watching. Peace.